The minor is in the books, and we should talk about the winner first and foremost. Atlanta FaZe, a team that I don't know. We've questioned them. I don't want to, retcon and try to gaslight the audience by saying
Yeah.
that we weren't trying to doubt them. But the beginning of the season had been very, very rough for Atlanta FaZe. Only one win through the first 2 weeks of the CDL season before the holiday break. So we were left with that feeling of just what the hell is wrong with FaZe. And we were left with that for about a month. They kind of shed, I don't know if all of that, because we have to see it in official matches, but this is certainly the biggest, or I guess the most obvious example that FaZe is probably still FaZe at its core and that they are a team to be reckoned with. Was that the idea or the sentiment that you came away from this minor with, that FaZe is still one of the best teams in the world?
Yeah, I mean that's really for anybody who's been a loyal listener, and especially over the past month where we've had a lot of filler episodes just talking about storylines and narratives and that sort of thing. I mean, as recently as doing our updated power rankings, I was really torn between just the idea of like replacing FaZe in the top three, and even with Toronto who had beaten them, and I was going back and forth in that, and we I don't think either of us said that like FaZe should make a roster move, but we at least discussed the possibility of that. Like just a mid-season roster move for FaZe hasn't happened at all in their CDL history. It's always been like one change post-season.
Yeah.
Um, and just the thought of actually discussing that being a possibility is something new for Atlanta FaZe. And like we were really diving into all of it. And to be completely honest, too, I mean, this tournament didn't start off amazing for them either. They got absolutely smoked their first map of the tournament against Miami. Red card hard point 250 to 113. And I'm sitting there watching this and I'm like, damn, FaZe is going to come in last in this tournament. We're going to have to go on the pod and talk about what's wrong with FaZe again, and all this, stuff. And then even in the search, I don't remember what the round count was, but the search was kind of close. And then Simp got a literal miraculous 1v4. And he honestly, I'm pretty sure he said it. And if he didn't say it, he like kind of alluded to it. Just like it was just the fact he shouldn't have even gotten the 1v4. Like if Metals just like waited for a couple more seconds with the bomb planted, like hid somewhere and just didn't show his face for a couple seconds, Simp didn't have time to kill and get the defuse. But after that 1v4, it was literally like a flip switch, and that was you can't give all the credit to one play like that because that only gets you one map win, but it really felt like that was a major catalyst and just momentum shift for this FaZe team, because after that they're able to take that series against Miami. It was still, the control was close to, and it came down to round five with Miami up 2-1 in the control, but then Atlanta had a really strong defensive hold in the fourth round of the control to secure defense again on Vault for round five. And we saw some really just absolutely nutty Vault control offensive rounds throughout this entire minor. So it's not like the securing defense was an automatic win for FaZe, but it helped them, especially after shutting them out, shutting Miami out in terms of capturing any of the zones in the previous round. And then they 100-point clubbed Miami in the final hard point there. So really, after what looked like, you know, a just scary first map that could have been like, here we are talking about FaZe losing again and what's wrong with FaZe, yada yada. 1v4 comes in, flips the script around on that match in particular. And then we go into that second match against LAT, and their LAT reverse swept the control, but outside of that, Atlanta won both hard points and the search pretty convincingly. Um, and we obviously have already seen those teams play a couple of times this year. And notably, the one that sticks out to me the most is their online qualifier match, where it was like, I just remember it looked like it could have been a 3-0 for LAT, but FaZe fought back in the control, won the fourth map, and forced a game 5. They ended up losing still, but that was just that's one match that sticks with me still. And this was totally different scenario here, and we'll get to LA Thieves a little bit because Nade shot. I saw some clips of him talking, and there's some drama and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
nonetheless, Atlanta comes out, beats them, and then they just from there have to play a Minnesota team that really showed some encouraging signs, in my opinion, throughout this entire minor. A lot of people didn't expect either of those teams to be in the position they were in this bracket, probably, but that's where they were. And Minnesota pushed them to a game 5 again. Atlanta was down 2-1 in the series. And most notably, they're down 2-1 on this in this series against Minnesota, and they have to play a red card hardpoint for map 4, which is the map that we just talked about, them getting absolutely destroyed by Miami to start this tournament, and Atlanta wins that one to stay alive and force the game 5 and beat Minnesota in a game 5, which Minnesota has played really well in game 5s up to this point in the year. So another solid performance from Atlanta. You can even probably make the argument that this was I think most people probably just say the win over LAT was the most impressive, but this was just like a resilient win, especially they go down 2-1 in the series and are able to fight back and make it to the finals of the online minor, and then they end up facing Carolina, who they again outside of the control, they looked pretty strong in the hard points, was around 11 in the search, but other than that, yeah, it was really more business as usual for what we've known historically of Atlanta FaZe. A lot of interesting tidbits here and there throughout the minor, but for the believers and the fans of Atlanta FaZe who never gave up hope, this has definitely got to feel good. And for anyone who's probably a little bit like me and wasn't, throwing up a major white flag or anything like that, but did have some doubts and some worries, this was a sign that, if he's still really good at Call of Duty, and you can pump the brakes on all that roster change talk and, rumors and stuff like that. I don't want to say, they still got some qualifiers and the actual LAN tournament to play. And if they bomb at Major 1 on LAN, then, maybe we have to revisit the roster talk. But for the time being, that's definitely the rumors and just speculation, I guess, on that front will definitely be a little quieter now after taking home this minor. But yeah, I mean, it was a really strong performance, and again, this is just a minor online tournament, so it's not a massive deal. $20,000 winner take all for first place, so nice 5K for each of the 4 players, and 30 CDL points, which won't help Atlanta potentially in the seeding for Major 1, which is a big deal because we talked about this on the last show, where like a team like LAT, they win the minor, it doesn't really change anything in the standings because they are already sitting pretty in terms of being in winners bracket for Major 1, but like Atlanta, who has struggled in the qualifier matches, this doesn't actually help them in their quest to start in winners bracket at Major 1. They're still going to have to show up and play these last couple qualifier matches and win them to have as good of a shot at with tiebreakers and stuff like that. So but this is definitely a good sign of things to come, I believe, for this Atlanta FaZe team. They still got some things to work on, but it was definitely a step in the right direction, a show of what this team is capable of. And if they can use this, minor victory, pun intended, to propel them to get some momentum, however you want to phrase it, for these upcoming qualifiers, they could be a dangerous team heading into Major 1.
To that point that you were talking about with the standings, obviously, like you said, the FaZe right now is still among those bottom 4 teams in the Major 1 standings, because you mentioned this has no effect on those standings at all. It's all about the end of season standings, really the champs qualification standings. So in that respect, they are tied for second in the CDL. If you can believe that, after really just we talked, for 4 weeks basically about the doom and gloom of Atlanta FaZe basically, and now they are tied with, I think, Optic and Toronto, or something along those lines. Those are the teams that are among the top four in the CDL at this current point in time. But when you talk about Major 1 standings, they're just above the Los Angeles Guerrillas and they're just above the Vegas Falcons. And if the season, or not the season, but if the Major 1 standings held today, they would be starting in losers bracket and would have to go all the way through that losers bracket in Spain. So that's something we have to keep in mind, and I'm sure they are keeping in mind as well. Obviously, this is a huge step in the right direction. Certainly something that they needed. Quite a few teams needed something like this, but for a championship contender like FaZe, we needed to see this as well. And I think it does, to an extent, like you were mentioning, quiet down some of those rumors and the speculation around FaZe and whether they will make a roster change. But if Pred is still out there, so I think that has to be taken into account. As long as he is a free agent and as long as he is looming, essentially, a lot of teams will have that speculation around them, and FaZe is certainly one of them. Even if that isn't a realistic scenario, that's just the situation that we're kind of living in at the moment. But I'm very happy for the FaZe guys that they were able to win this. I'm sure there is some kind of pressure lifted into the extent of, like, if they lost, let's say, in the first round of this tournament, we're just talking about, oh my God, look at FaZe. And then those qualifying matches to finish out the Major 1 cycle are even more important. They're going to have even more focus put on them, even though, they're kind of in the same situation that they came into this minor with. They still have to win some matches to get out of the losers bracket, to give themselves a good shot at winning Major 1. But I just think it's a really interesting story. And what I came away from this this minor really thinking about was something that you mentioned very briefly, is the resilience of Atlanta FaZe. And that was something that wasn't really present too much in those first 2 weeks of the qualifying matches, but they lost to the Heretics, got blown out in that first hard point. I think it's very easy for a team who has struggled so far in this season to lose that map, to lose it so convincingly, and then kind of tilt and just say, screw it. Like, why can't we win these maps? Why are we losing so bad to Miami, who we both agree is like a middling team? Atlanta FaZe, they come back, they win 3 straight maps, including a 100-point club of Miami. And then you talked about it. They had probably their most convincing win against LAT. And LAT, to this point in the season, has been the best team in the league. Minnesota, they were very resilient. They very easily could have tilted, lost that match. They end up winning it. And then Carolina, who we would talk about. Carolina is probably one of the best teams in the CDL. I don't think we can deny it anymore, considering what we saw at the minor and what we saw in those first 2 weeks of the season. So huge congratulations to FaZe. I think FaZe fans are probably going to take a little bit of a victory lap, probably deservedly so, but life is going to come back around and we're going to get into these qualifying matches again, and we're going to see if FaZe can keep up that run that they've started now at the minor.